welcome. God bless you. Good to be with you. Hope you're all doing well. This is our second message in our series on the life and ministry of John the Baptizer, or John the Baptist. I always want to leave in this series a point to ponder, one point to ponder, and an application to consider with regard to this man, John. Brief review, the message number one was John was a man. His particular gifts and callings may have been different, but the call upon his life to live by faith was not. It's exactly the same as every person in the Bible. We're called to live by faith. He wrestled with the same carnal nature that we have, temptations, and with the tempter, who I'm sure tried to knock him off track. He lived in a broken world, and in his journey of faith, he grew in the grace and knowledge of his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's 2 Peter 3:18. We're all encouraged and instructed, grow in grace. Well, today I want to look at his parents. If I were to title this message, it would be, Parents Are Important. We're also going to take a look at the parents of Samson and John the Baptist, because they are the only two perpetual Nazarites from their mother's womb. Their mothers were older women, barren, and God made a special appearance and told them they were going to have a child. Well, parents. The fifth commandment in the Ten Commandments is, honor thy father and thy mother. And then in Paul, when he repeats this to the church at Ephesus, a totally Gentile church, nothing had changed. He said, honor your father and your mother. And then he says, this is the first commandment with promise, that your days may be long, that you'd have a good life here on the earth. Learning to honor your father and your mother. Well, not all parents are honorable, but nonetheless, God says honor them. That's the means through which he chose. Well, let me go to Acts. Acts chapter 17. Paul is talking to the intellectuals of his days on Mars Hill and telling them about the idol they have there to the unknown God. And in Acts chapter 17, verse 24, he says this. See, this is important. Why you, no matter what your parents are like, you should honor them. Okay? God, who made the world and all things in it, seeing he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands. Neither is he worshipped with men's hands as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things, and hath made one blood, and hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell upon the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation, that they should seek the Lord, if perhaps they might feel after him and find him, though he is not far from every one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your poets have said, for we are also his offspring. See, why we should honor our parents is what, honorable or not, parents, is in honoring them, we are honoring God, because it is God who brought us into this world. You pull God out of the mix, live any way you want to. But when you realize that I am here because Almighty God, I am an offspring of his, and that's the means he chose to bring me into the world, it helps you to honor parents, because you're honoring God. You're acknowledging God in all of this. Well, I think this is a reasonable statement. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. I think we need to get that notion out of our heads right from the get-go. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. Nobody chooses their parents. Nobody chooses the place they're born, America. Nobody chooses the time in which they're born. But we are acknowledging that God did this. And in acknowledging this, we honor God. So I'm talking to believers, people who believe there is a God, and believe that the Bible is his word, and their parents. They find themselves as parents. Well, let me give you the definition of parenting. And it came right out of, 1828, Noah Webster's Dictionary of the English Language. Here's what it says, excuse me, when it talks about a parent. parents produce young, okay? Then they're to maintain them. That means feed them and clothe them. Without that, they die. So that's one of their basic responsibilities, to maintain them. And then to protect them, to guard or defend or shield them from danger, from injury, or from evil. You don't take your child out by the road and let him play. You see, it's just a natural parenting, inbred thing that God has put in us. You are going to maintain them, feed them, take care of them, and you're going to protect them. In fact, you can mess with other people, but don't mess with our kids. We all have that in us. Don't do that, because there's a desire to protect them. And then number 3 is, it says to educate them. So to maintain them, take care of them, to protect them, and then to educate them. Literally to teach, instruct, enlighten, to instill into their minds the principles of not just scholastics, reading, writing, arithmetic, but of morals and religion and of behavior. And it says this right in the dictionary, which may well be the most important duties of the parents or the guardians. So that's what a definition of a parent is. Well, very briefly, I want us to go to their parents. John's parents, mom and dad, and Samson's parents, mom and dad. We're going to begin with Samson's in Judges chapter 13. We'll read about his parents. Judges 13 verse 2 says, "And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and bore not. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto the woman and said unto her, Behold now, thou art barren and bearest not, but thou shalt conceive and bear a son." She's not even pregnant yet. This man, it's an angel, but he looks like a man. And he says, you're going to have a son. Now therefore beware, I pray thee, and drink not wine, nor strong drink, nor eat anything unclean. For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin, he's not going to be the deliverer, but he's going to begin to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. Just a few thoughts. And by the way, I want us to think about, though we're not going to spend a lot of time on Elizabeth, but it's interesting to me that the angel of the Lord didn't appear to Manoah, the father. He appeared to his wife, who is nameless. We don't have her name. But he appears to her and tells her about this. And she eventually goes and tells her husband. And he gives her the basic instructions. Let me make a comment on when a woman is carrying a child. He says, don't eat this and don't drink this. In other words, observe the dietary laws of the Jew. And once he's born, let his hair grow. Okay, he's going to be a Nazarite. Those are one of the evidences of a Nazarite vow, which a Nazarite vow was to restrain carnal nature. That's why these things were given to them. People would take on certain vows to restrain, to hopefully to deny ourselves, take up our cross, the New Testament version of that, and follow Christ. For a woman, when she conceives and begins to bear a child, she really begins to think about the child, and what she's putting into her, she knows is going to affect that child. And so it's wise of a mother to eat right. Don't get drunk. Don't do drugs. Don't do the kinds of things like that. Now, the focus here is upon people who already believe in God, and they want to be godly parents. They want to maintain this child that God's going to give them. They want to protect them and then educate and train them up in the ways of the Lord. So that's just a point I wanted to make. And by the way, when it says of Elizabeth in Luke chapter 1, here's what it says of Elizabeth and her husband Zacharias in Luke chapter 1 verse 6, "And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blameless." So they would have been very familiar with Nazarite vows. They'd been very familiar with Samson, his mom, and his dad Manoah. And so they would have adhered to those things apply to them, those things apply to us. What I'm trying to establish is these are godly people. fact, let me read to you in Judges 13, the next two verses. Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, a man of God came unto me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God, very awesome. And I asked him not from where he was, neither told he me his name. Not this idle curiosity about this experience she's had. She was above that. So it speaks of her maturity. But he said unto me, behold, now thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and now drink no wine nor strong drink, neither eat any unclean thing, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. He's going to be a special, set apart to God child. I want to drum roll a little bit Elizabeth here. In Luke chapter 1 also, remember when she told Manoah's wife came to him, he was not threatened by her spirituality or the fact that God had appeared to her and didn't appear to him, which speaks of a good marriage. They're not competing for spirituality in this. They're complementing one another. They're helping one another in their journey of faith. God appeared to Zacharias, and he had to tell Elizabeth these things. Still speaks of a good marriage. Now, remember when Mary, the mother of Christ, conceived, she went to Elizabeth, a relative of hers, a cousin of hers, to her house because she heard that she was now with child. And wow, this is really something. She's an old woman beyond the years of bearing children. And verse 39 of Luke chapter 1, and Mary arose in those days and went into the hill country with haste into a city of Judah and entered into the house of Zacharias and greeted Elizabeth. And it came to pass that when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary, the babe leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit, and she spoke out with a loud voice and said, blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. And why is this granted to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For lo, as soon as the voice of thy greeting sounded in mine ears, the babe leaped in my womb for joy. And blessed is she that believed, for there shall be a performance of those things which were told her from the Lord. Both Samson and John the Baptist had godly mothers. These women knew the Lord. I mean, we could spend a lot of time here just drum rolling the attributes of Elizabeth's faith and of Samson's mother's faith. They weren't doubting. They weren't struggling. Parents, mothers. Now let's take a look at the fathers real quickly. In verse 8, this is Manoah. We know his name, and he is the father. He is going to father. It hasn't happened yet. No conception's taken place yet. She comes, tells him, watch this man of faith. Verse 8 says, then Manoah entreated the Lord and said, O my Lord, let the man of God to whom thou didst send come again unto us, and teach us what we shall do for the child that shall be born. He doesn't doubt the fact the child's going to be born, and it's not even conceived yet, and they've been trying a long time. They're old now. And it says, some of the translations says, then Manoah entreated, it says he earnestly prayed. This is a man of prayer. This is a man that knew how to come to God. One of those holy moments, what do? You go vertical. Oh God, I want everything out of this I'm supposed to get. You're going to give us a child. We don't know how to raise a child. We've never had any children. This is a special child, obviously. How do you want us to raise that? And every child God gives us is a special gift from God. Every child. He says, teach us. This is a man of faith. Well, let me read to you verses 21 and 22 here. Now, we're skipping some really cool things and important things. He said, let us make you a meal. He said, you can make the meal, but I'm not going to eat it. And then to evidence the fact that he was, in fact, the angel of the Lord, fire came down and consumed the meal. And they realized this is the angel of God. Verse 22, and Manoah said unto his wife, we shall surely die because we have seen God. This is where I believe his wife's theology, at least, was stronger than Manoah's. Both people that feared God. They had it. This is a fearful experience for them. The reverence of God is upon them. But watch his wife's reasoning with her theology. But his wife said unto him, verse 23, if the Lord were pleased to kill us, he would not have received a burnt offering and a meal offering at our hands, neither would he have shown us all these things, nor as at this time we have told us things like these. You're going to have a child. We're not going to die. We need to have a reverence for God, but there was a reasoning ability within his wife that her husband didn't quite have. And in a marriage relationship, I think that goes back and forth. I know there have been times that I've been burdened and concerned over things, and Joyce will make a few comments in her walk with God, and it stabilizes me. And I know that same thing has happened with Joyce, and concerns or issues come up, and then God will use me. Those are signs of a good marriage. What I'm trying to say is, I believe that Samson had good, godly parents. I believe that John had good, godly parents. I want us to take a look back in Luke again. I'm going to read a couple other verses. You recall how Zacharias, beginning with about verse 8, this is his encounter. He's the one that God reveals to about the special child they're about to have. And it came to pass, verse 8, that while he executed the priest's office before God in the order of his course, this is a man serving the Lord in his gifts and callings, according to the custom of the priest's office, his lot was to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. And the whole multitude of the people were praying outside at the time of incense. And there appeared unto him an angel of the Lord standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And when Zacharias saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. Sound familiar? Sounds just like Manoah. Fear fell upon him, and the angel of the Lord said unto him, fear not, Zacharias, for thy prayer is heard, and thy wife lived. He'd been praying for a child for years. I doubt he'd been praying for one recently. He may have, but after a while you realize, God's answer to this prayer is no. We're probably not going to have any children. They're beyond the childbearing ages. Elizabeth shall bear thee a son, and thou shalt call his name John. And then he tells him, you're going to have joy and gladness, and many shall rejoice at his birth, for he shall be great in the sight of the Lord, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. He gives him that information. Him drinking wine and strong drink shouldn't have anything to. He knows this is applicable to his wife. And many of the children of Israel shall he turn to the Lord their God, and he shall go before him in the spirit of the Lord and of power and the power of Elijah, and shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. What a powerful thing, encounter he's having. But watch verse 18. And Zacharias said unto the angel, how shall I know this? He kicks instantly into human capacity. For I am an old man, and my wife well stricken in years. I think what God is doing right here, here's what the angel said. And the angel answering said unto him, I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God. What's the issue here, Zacharias? Is this something it's up to you that you're going to do? I think it's what God did right there. He took him to school and taught him a lesson. Over the next 9 months, he doesn't speak. He comes out and wants to communicate. He has to do it by hands and letters. He learns something about the power of God. I dare say this lesson he taught to John throughout his life, the one he is responsible to maintain, to protect, to educate. Don't reduce God down to human capacity to accomplish, as though it were up to him. It takes one seed. God says, I'm going to do this. One. Don't reduce me down to just human capacity. As parents, if we don't bring God in the mix, we're reducing him down to human capacity, our ability to do the parenting. I hope I've said this. If I haven't, I'll say it again. Get the notion out of our minds that there is no such thing as a perfect parent. We got to get that out of our minds. Nobody chooses their parents. Nobody chooses all these things. God does. When you see a life, that life, Acts 17, we are of his offspring. God is the one who gives life. Bring God into the mix, this makes sense. Pull him out, this is insane. So we're talking about godly people. Well, this question I think should come to mind. Why did John turn out so good? Both had godly parents. Both had angelic announcements. Both were given special gifts and callings of things God wanted them to fulfill. Why did John turn out so good? Jesus' eulogy of him, there's never been a greater prophet born of woman than John. And why did Samson turn out so poorly? He dies standing in a pagan temple between two pillars. His last words are a prayer for suicide. Let me die with the Philistines. He looks over his shoulder and says, I made a mess of things. Why does Samson end so poorly? Here's the point to ponder. There are many good and godly parents who have done the best they can to bring their children up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Not perfect. Drum roll that again. No such thing as a perfect parent. Some of our not so perfect moments as parents, Joyce and I, are etched in our minds. We wish we could have done that particular thing over. We'd have done it different. Moments of anger, moments of impatience and unkindness and critical spirit. Just that kind of stuff. We've had our moments in this. I know people, godly people, raise their children in the ways of the Lord. They end up like Samson. Or they'll have 5 children, or 4 or 6, or whatever it is, and many of them turn out for the Lord. But there'll be one. Grew up in the same home, same parents, ate the same table, experienced the same things in their life, and walk away from the Lord. Prodigals. Some that return, some that never do. I want to make this statement. I flat out don't understand that. I don't know why. What we're talking about in parenting of these two men of God, godly parents, and one turning out so good and one turning out so poorly, I don't understand that. I don't understand. This thing called parenting is much bigger than we're going to talk about in 15 minutes. But the point to ponder is this. Parents have a tendency to blame themselves when the child fails to measure up to their potential or to follow their gifts and callings. We've seen it. We're old now. We've seen this in homes. They come to this place and point. One time felt called of God into ministry, and now atheistic in their life and in their beliefs. Why? I don't understand all of that. There is a temptation to blame yourself. Samson's parents, John's parents, both perpetual Nazarites. One finished, one not so good. I don't think that's what God would have us do. I think the devil would have us as parents blame ourselves when the failures occur. In fact, I think the devil will hand you the whip if you'll beat yourself with it. Come to the place I don't understand those things. The application to consider, parenting is serious business. Do the best you can, pray, and trust God. While you have them about you, invest all you can and do all the things that you believe God would have you do that are right. The time will come when they are out from underneath that time of maintaining. You're not feeding them, you're not clothing them, you're not protecting them. They're out in the world and you cannot shelter them. Educating them, there comes a time when your counsel is no longer wanted or needed. They're on their own, making their own choices, those kinds of things. But the one thing you can do when they're to that place is pray. Pray before conception, at conception, even while the child's in the womb, there's things that can occur that you can benefit and do the best you can. Pray and trust God. Our ministry now, the biggest part of our ministry, is prayer. Well, next week, we're going to take a look at the witness of John. The witness of John is a powerful thing. John knew who he wasn't, therefore he knew who Jesus was. And that, I think, it'll be really an enjoyable time. And until then, the prayer that we pray for our listeners, subscribers, every Friday, prayed it today. And this I pray, that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in all judgment, that you may approve things that are excellent, that you may be sincere without offense until the day of Jesus Christ, being filled with the fruits of righteousness which are by Jesus Christ unto the glory and praise of God. Knowledge, give them all the knowledge you can. But the judgments, pray their judgments and choices will be good ones and right ones. You can't make them for them. Pray that their judgments will be the best that they can be. God bless you.